Okay, so this video is going to be about the Nex, N-E-X, the narc X, N-E-X. So when I say Nex, just know that I mean narcissistic X. Okay, so what is it like being in a relationship with a narcissist? It's terrible. It's really not good at all. It may be okay for like the first maybe 2 months, 3 months, whatever, however long. I'd say it's good for about 2 months. Okay, I wouldn't even say it's good. I feel like good is an overstatement. It's overrated. But being with a narcissist in a relationship is terrible. It's terrible. It's one of the worst things that anybody can experience. Imagine, because everybody has something to say about love. Love is supposed to be irresistible. Love's supposed to be amazing. It's supposed to be an adventure. It's supposed to be fun. But when dating a narcissist, it's not. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Being with a narcissistic partner. Because the reality of the situation is this person is more than likely cheating on you the whole time. Yeah, they're not faithful. They're probably talking about you behind your back. You know how that goes. Being with a narcissist, it's almost as bad, or maybe even in some cases worse, than being with a narcissistic mother. But what I can say about my experience, dealing with a Nex, is that being with a Nex is a violation. Is a violation of human rights, a violation of the body, the mind, the soul. And imagine, laying next to an alligator or a snake or a monster or whatever you want to call it. Imagine basically being with a Nex is sleeping with the enemy, essentially. It's not good at all. It's terrible. And it's living a life of misery, realistically. Unless we're dealing with Nex-us who are very good at future faking and love bombing, then it may be good during the love bombing stages. But as far as my experience is concerned, it was terrible from the very beginning for me. With every and all Nex-us that I have dated, every single one of them was terrible from the first day we dated to the end where the breakup happened. It was absolutely terrible. Now, I'll first talk about my next boyfriend. LOL. And I'm not saying next boyfriend as in next boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend being my next boyfriend, but I'm talking about Nex as an Nex boyfriend. Well, anyway, so with my testimony with him, he turned out to be a racist. And the red flags were there. They were there from the very beginning of the relationship, but the reality of the situation was, because I had grown up with so many narcissists, that I was desensitized and I thought everybody was a jerk. I thought everybody in the world was a jerk. Because I had narcissistic mom, narcissistic dad, narcissistic siblings, narcissistic cousins. It was just so many narcissists that I grew up around that I just thought everybody was like that. And the reality of it is, it's not. I know that's not healthy. I know healthy people are looking at it from the outside in and they're like, well, no, not everybody's like that. But if you grow up in a narcissistic family and 90% of your family members are narcissists, and say there's only one or two or three people in the family that are healthy and normal to break that generational curse, it's kind of hard to believe that there are actually good people out there. If the only thing that, us people who are regular normal people who've grown up in a narcissistic family, if that's all we see, that's all we know. And I'm pretty sure people who've grown up in a narcissistic family can relate to what I'm saying. That, it's hard to believe that there's kind people out there when there's so many narcissists in the family, right? But anyway, so because I grew up around narcissists, I attracted narcissists. And in some cases, I was attracted to narcissistic people, right? And because, when us normal people, when we grow up in a narcissistic family, we're not taught boundaries. Anytime we try to establish boundaries, we are undermined by narcissistic family members who have, unfortunately, the authority to shut us down when we do set boundaries. Or, our narcissistic family members do not teach us about red flags, therefore we don't know better when it comes to recognizing them. We don't know it for what it is, or we're taught to ignore it, or to overlook it, and to just deal with it. Now, I know with my particular incident, with my next boyfriend, I had thoughts of breaking up with him, from the, very beginning of the relationship, but my narcissistic family members were the ones who encouraged me to stay with him. And we all know how narcissistic families are a bad influence on us, especially if we want to lead a healthy lifestyle, we want to be in a healthy relationship, we want to do better for ourselves. Narcissistic family members are not necessarily the people who are the greatest influences, nor are they the people that are should be allowed to come with us on that journey. When we've reached adulthood, we want to break the cycle and we want to do something. We want to do better with our lives. Narcissistic family members should not be invited on that journey. And there was a rude awakening when I, started going out there and I started dating, and I realized that I would date narcissist after narcissist after narcissist, and then I started realizing that there was something wrong. There was something wrong with me internally, to where I was attracted to these people, and I attracted these people, and I stayed for as long as I did. And there was something wrong with my family members for encouraging me to be with someone who didn't respect me, that was willing to smear campaign me, and that was willing to disrespect me and cheat on me and humiliate me and sabotage my future. It was something wrong with my family members for influencing me to be with someone like that. My family members influenced me to be with my next boyfriend because it was good for the image. He was good for the image. They didn't care about my well-being. They didn't care about how he made me feel, or how he always put me down or embarrassed me in front of other people, or looked at other women, obviously, on social media and made it clear. They didn't care about that. The only thing they cared about was their image. So they influenced me to be with him and stay with him, even though I was unhappy, even though I didn't want to be with him anymore and I didn't love him. They influenced me to stay with him, despite how miserable he was making me, despite how disrespectful he was towards me. And that's how narcissistic family members a lot of times will do a person who is trying to, break the cycle and go out and date. And that's what my family did to me. Now, I want to share what my next boyfriend did. Okay, so when I dated him, he was very, very disrespectful, and he was racist as well. He was misogynistic and he was racist, but more specifically, he was just an all-out asshole. And one of the red flags that I definitely ignored, I will definitely take accountability for ignoring, was when he said Richard Nixon was the best president ever. A lot of people he has a bad rep for the Watergate scandal, but aside from that, he was a really good president. And that should have been the moment where I broke things off. That should have been the moment where I broke things off. But at the time, I didn't know much about Richard Nixon. The only thing I knew was a Watergate scandal because of our crappy education system. That's all we're taught. But I didn't know much about Richard Nixon, but I should have looked him up, because if I had looked him up and, if I had just simply looked him up, I would have broken up with my ex. at that time. Because Richard Nixon was one of the worst presidents, if not the worst president, aside from Andrew Jackson. He was the worst president ever, and he was a racist. And I'm black. I'm black. My next boyfriend was not black, and he thought that Richard Nixon was the best president ever, which should have let me know that I should have got up out of that relationship ASAP. That was what he said on our first date, our first or second date. He said that, but like I said, I didn't really know anything about Richard Nixon until I started looking more into him, and then I realized that I was in a relationship with a closeted racist. The next thing he said to me was that he was a skinhead. Like I said, I didn't know very much about, because of the shitty education that we're being given here in America, especially in Texas. I didn't know very much about skinheads. I really didn't. And he said, the skinheads that, dated black women. Now, I don't know too much about skinheads that date black women other than it being a fetish and to control and to dominate. Just like the slave times where white men would date black women to dominate them sexually, and they looked at them as a piece of meat, as a sexual conquest. So if he's talking about skinheads dating black women, then the only thing I can think of is it being some kind of sick fetish and sexual conquest. That was a red flag number 2, where I should have broke up with him, but I didn't know no better. Now I do. Now I do. Because I've had to deal with him for quite some time. And he's been stalking me ever since. What else? Looking at other women on social media. Talking bad about me behind my back to his friends. His friends have had to come to me several times and tell me that he's saying these bad things about me. And when we enter into relationships, it's understandable that we have to vent, especially to our friends when the relationship isn't going that well and we're upset and we vent and we have some things to say. We go to our friends and we complain, and our friends a lot of times listen and give us advice to better fix the relationship. But he wasn't doing that. He was smearing me behind my back. And it got to the point where he was doing it so much to where other people started to see that he was the problem and that I was actually the good person in the relationship. And it got to the point where he talked so badly about me and so often that all of his friends cut him off. Because he would trash talk me, and I was a good partner to him. But he was a narcissist. So that's what narcissists often at times do. And the reason why I'm sharing this is just to explain often at times what normal people have to go through when they enter into a relationship with a narcissist. A lot of the times, narcissists are prejudiced in some way, shape, or form, whether it's they're sexist, misogynistic, racist, xenophobic, homophobic. It doesn't matter. Narcissists have some type of prejudice. Some type of prejudice, for sure. They all do. They all do. Because having a prejudice is a form of evil. And narcissists are evil. All of them are. To intentionally go around and hurting somebody, it's evil. It's practicing evil. And to have a prejudice against somebody is evil. Okay? So that is a testimony with my next boyfriend. He went out of his way to attack my womanhood, make me look bad. And the reality of it was, I was loyal to him until I couldn't be loyal to him anymore. And then even after the relationship, when he continued to talk trash about me and make fun of me and put me down and try to publicly humiliate me, I didn't say anything. I just ignored him. And I'm telling my story now because he was one of the people who used his authority to oppress me. He at some point became a police officer and misused and abused his power to invade and take away my rights. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you all is because when dealing with narcissists, especially narcissists who are part of the dark triad, who participate in the black market, it gets ugly. The abuse gets ugly, especially if they discard you or you go no contact with them. They turn their mask falls off, and you get to see the demonic face behind that. You get to see their true colors and how they really felt, who they really are as a person. And my next boyfriend did everything he could to sabotage my life, to humiliate me, to attack my womanhood, and to make me look bad in front of everybody, when the reality of it was no one supported him. And even the people who originally did couldn't anymore, because it became abundantly clear that he was the problem. It became abundantly clear that he wasn't a good person, and that everything he said about me was probably a lie or grossly exaggerated to make himself look good, or to make himself seem like the victim, when the reality of it was he was not the victim. I was. Okay? He went out of his way to tarnish my name and my reputation, all because I went no contact with him. And that's a lot of times what any narcissist would do in any relationship. But in this particular circumstance, I'm talking about significant other. Now I'm going to move on to my next girlfriend. My next girlfriend, on the other hand, was the same way, maybe even a little worse. She went out of her way to try to, sabotage everything. And there was red flags with her too, but they were a little bit more subtle. She, on the other hand, was selfish. She was selfish and envious. That was her problem. She did not like the fact that I was respected by people, that I had a lot of friends, and that I dressed nice and I smelled nice, and that I had a lot of fans, whether they were friends or romantic interests. She did not like the attention that I was getting. And so she did everything that she could to isolate me from my friends and my family so that she could have complete control over me. She stooped to unbelievable levels to have control in the connection. She's also one of the people who has something to do with me being human trafficked, along with my mother and my sister. She also participated in it. She took credit for a lot of my ideas and my hard work and passed it off as her own. This is my next girlfriend that I'm talking about. She humiliated me. She sabotaged me from working. She stole from me my identity and my money. Took loans out under my name. She did all types of things. She was a user. She was a leech. A leech. A soul-sucking leech. And she stopped at nothing to take everything from me. And she was greedy with it too, had more than enough. It took more and more and more from me when I had nothing. That was my next girlfriend. My next girlfriend would do evil things like, for example, because she was stealing money from me and I didn't have any, it was hard for me to find a job. It was hard for me to buy clothes and to take care of myself. And because I was being human trafficked, I was being, my free will was being taken away from me. I wasn't necessarily able to move around freely like most people are.